झूठा प्रोपेगंडा प्रचार हम नहीं कर रहे कि आयुर्वेद में कुछ नहीं रखा,
जहाँ पे आयुर्वेदिक इलाज के नाम पर ठगी की गई है।
The whole of Ayurveda, if you take away the principle, it ceases to exist.
To the young people, if you had to explain Ayurveda, how would you explain it to them?
Ayurveda is so big and so vast that it is not possible to explain it in some short ways.
Is Ayurveda more of a lifestyle?
It's a science of health and not a science of sickness. In Swiggy, there used to be almost a thumb rule that says if you give people friction, especially at the bottom of the funnel, there will be funnel drop-offs. Rather than charging it as delivery fee. So why don't we flip it and call it a delivery fee tip? Usually Pampers ads or Huggies ads or diapers ads will have a happy baby running around. First time ever in any diapering history. Who would have thought connecting diapers and mental development? It was what we call the category unlock.
Cal is very famous for certain herbs.
I'm guessing you're not applying that on the shoulder.
Cal was great for many reasons, but there were three reasons which I think were famous from day one. There were at least 2 or 3 professors who you could have spirited debates with, and if the debate didn't end when the class ended, they will call you to their home and they would continue the conversation over some amber liquid.
Also, they will not adhere to work-life balance.
No. What work-life balance? You're sitting in the professor's home over a single malt and discussing the same topic with the professor, right?
Is that a real picture that you took, Vivek?
Huh? Yeah, that's mine.
No, the picture is you took that
I
picture.
took that picture.
In Jim Corbett?
No, this was at Ranthambore. This came in the Economic Times.
This is
Photography as a skill we haven't talked about yet.
my mind is cluttered. We were thinking about talking about how to declutter Gen Z's mind.
This actually helped a lot in many ways. Actually, I'll give you this. We now, in my batch from IMCAL, I'm sure tumhare bhi honge, I'm Bangalore wale, because I've seen now other IMs. Basically, photography is a big, just like if you think about it, 40 years ago, what was the hobby of the business professional? Golf. If you are some senior level professional, golf was your thing. Today it's not golf. What is it?
For business professionals.
Imagine you're a 40 to 60 year old.
I thought in Southeast Asia at least golf is still.
Southeast Asia में अभी भी golf है. Bangkok तो लोग golf के लिए ही जाते हैं.
Vietnam, Indonesia.
बराबर इंडिया में क्या है? What is the hobby that allows for bonding, relaxation, and a bit of skill?
Photography.
It's wildlife.
Wildlife.
And a lot of them actually are doing birding, wildlife photography.
Wildlifing, etc. It's become
So is that because it helps you calm down?
totally.
It's-
You're just hyper-oxygenated in the forests.
Yeah.
There is no distraction. You are thinking calmly. You're with friends who you don't have to worry about putting on an act. These are people who know the insides of you. So there's no putting on any act, right?
But actually, I think a lot of the young people also are taking to photography.
Obviously, they're adopting it faster than,
Because nowadays, because of all this social media and everything, photography has become.
But the wildlife part of it, you cannot replace. Tum kitna bhi tum photograph, AI can make that tiger. But seeing it, so let me give you an example. The first time when I saw a tiger, the tiger was about as far as Lisha is. ठीक है, वो मेरे side से निकला, open jeep. And we were all quite excited, obviously. And then later in the night, when I was checking my app, I saw that sitting there, just watching the tiger, my heartbeat was 120. I have never seen my heartbeat go above 100 if you're just sitting somewhere. मतलब बैठे-बैठे कहाँ heartbeat ऊपर जाएगा? But it was 120 for that entire 2.5 minutes that the tiger passed by, which is like insane.
You have all the new
No,
issues.
so,
How
yeah.
are you planning to solve for all of that? This is the perfect place to get some of those answers.
Yeah, no, Vivek, we have been talking previously as well. My knee issue actually started almost 4-5 years back.
Right.
And if you touch here and if you try to listen, you can actually hear cracking.
Yeah. I had the same in my shoulder. It's called crepitus.
Okay.
If you Google it, it's called crepitus.
And I've gone through quite a bit of treatment, short of any kind of operation or surgical treatment.
Essentially, avoided operations till as long as you can.
Yeah. And so, how do you think Ayurveda can help me? And I play a lot of sports. I have stopped for a bit because I want it to heal properly. I do quite a bit of exercise, gym. I try yoga as well. So what do you think Ayurveda can do for me?
I think it can do a lot. I'm not a doctor who's evaluating your knee to start with, but I think a good doctor, in fact, since you're here, later in the day, I would love to hear what a doctor assesses your knee and says what the issue is. In fact, I'll wait till you finish your doctor appointment and then I'll compare it and tell you about what he told me. I had a frozen shoulder problem, which for any racket sports, you play tennis, I play squash. Frozen shoulder is a major problem if you have one. It'll prevent range of motion, right? Your serve will be messed up, right? Overhead shots are messed up. You can't play tennis without an overhead. And the same for squash. So I had problems here. I used to have the tuck-tuck sound. It's called crepitus. And so the doctor assessed, any MRI would tell you that there is calcification that's happened, and so on and so forth. So effectively, there was a 3-stage procedure by which I got my shoulder improved. Step 1 was essentially a process by which they broke down the hardness and the calcification, and they sort of used a combination of heats. It's called seka. They used it to basically pindasvedana, actually it's called.
Is it the round thing which is heated and then?
Exactly, right? Medicated herbs inside a bolus and at a certain degree of heat applied for about 40 minutes every day. Within a week or so, this starts to break and you start getting to see, you can feel that something inside it has started to dissolve. Stage 2 is going into the bones and everything else that have been abraded or the joints and lubricating them. And that was essentially a process of lubrication of the joints, and because obviously there is dryness, etc. that's happened. And stage 3 is rebuilding of the strength of this part. So the oil that was actually used to do the third bit, and of course there were some medicines that were given along with it. So in a 21-day process, I got there's no noise you can hear right now. I can play squash. My benchmark for saying I've got mobility back was, whiplash strokes when squash. And my benchmark for saying I've got strength back was a bench press, because in bench press you go.
You have the entire motion.
The entire motion is there, right? And this at this point is where the pain used to be the greatest. So we go to the same gym. I was able to bench press back to my standard 70-80 kilo bench press.
Oh wow, you do 70-80 kilo bench press.
When I was able to do 70-80 kgs back, I messaged my doctor that day saying, I'm back to normal, thank you very much. So, but it took me 21 days of process.
So for immediate inflammation, do you have some oil?
Basically this oil is our proprietary oil. It's called Myaxil. It's a combination of lovely herbs, but there are 2 parts at which it plays. First of all, the oil that actually has the greatest amount of seeping through or penetration is sesame based oil. So this is based in sesame oil, and it has some amazing herbs that does 3 things. 1, it essentially doesn't kill the pain receptor, but it basically provides relief so that you actually have less pain. So it gives him a pretty quick relief on pain. But importantly, if I just numb the pain receptor, sure, the pain goes away, but the moment that drug wears away, the pain comes back because the underlying cause hasn't changed. So this has herbs that actually go and improve the underlying causes at the musculoskeletal level. And the third thing is it actually also strengthens you for the future, so that your future injuries can also be prevented. So because it does instant relief and future, this is a wonderful oil. We actually gave it to the girls who played for the state of Karnataka as well. They were playing football.
Oh, wow,
we gave
amazing.
it to the team because they get into injuries all the time.
Footer injuries. Something which I should have, learnt about when I was young as well. But I'll definitely buy this one.
Actually, the state you're from and Odisha are 2 states that still have a very strong tradition of both yoga and Ayurveda. Yoga is well known. Bihar is very well known for its yoga tradition. But even for Ayurveda, yoga, the Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha belt is what I could call the second belt of what is called preserved Ayurveda. Kerala is the first one. A variant of Ayurveda is there in Tamil Nadu called Siddha. The S in Ayush is Siddha. And then there is Gujarat and Maharashtra belt has a very strong preserved Ayurveda tradition. And then there is the UP hills and everything in UP, just because of the fact that this is where a lot of our heritage is. And the forests also in Bihar, Jharkhand have got a lot of Ayurvedic amazing tradition.
And the Himalayas?
Himalayas as well, but Himalayas are restricted in terms of how patients can go. So it'll have a lot of research happening, a lot of herbs are there, but patients are not going to travel to Himalayas. So like with any field, you need to have practice with patience. So up in the Himalayas, the yogis don't have much practice, is what I would say.
So Vivek, I'm not a Gen Z, unfortunately, but I know that a lot of Gen Zs now they track their sleep. I do as well. Oftentimes, getting sleep is a challenge for a lot of people for various reasons. Is there something for sleep as well?
Yeah, so sleep, there is some fantastic solutions. I think there are 3 things that I would say are the game changer for sleep. 1, prevent doing things that mess your sleep in the first place. So, meal after 9 o'clock, absolute sleep quality killer.
Coffee at 7 p.m.
Coffee at 7 p.m.
I need to stop drinking coffee so late in the night. Honestly, I drink coffee at 11:30.
In the night.
Yeah, if I have to stay awake for long, I drink coffee at 11:30. But somehow I'm able to sleep at 12.
Do me one simple measure. For the next 1 month, just live your life normally.
Yeah.
Have your coffees, on the days you have your coffees at late in the night.
Yes.
And therefore you sleep a little later. Track the sleep quality and quantity. Check for REM and non-REM sleep.
Yeah.
And then show me the graph for a month of that. Barring certain odd cases, you will find that without the coffee, your sleep is going to be better. Right? Some people are a little more used to it than others, and so on and so forth. So that is the first one, which is don't eat too late in the night, don't have liquor too late in the night, don't have coffee too late in the night, don't have any of these stimulants too late in the night. So is one preventer. Yeah. The second is the positives, right? Which is the removal of the negatives is one. The second is the positives. Yeah. There are nightly routines that are there, which are either called dinacharya in the larger sense of the term, or ratricharya if you want to be more precise, that can actually enable better sleep.
Yeah.
So they include what is called the calming routines. So, no blue light, no blue light stuff, having a more peaceful, don't get into any agitated stuff, calm the mind down, meditate if you feel like meditating or know how to meditate. And then there are some oils that are very calming oils, amazing calming oils, which, for example, this one is it's a very calming oil. This one we sell in the US and in India. It's called Ksherabala Tailam. Okay. The bala inside it is a herb which is called Sida cordifolia. The botanical name is Sida cordifolia, and it is known, there are many scientific papers about Sida cordifolia and what it does to actually calm you down. And it actually will give you much better sleep if you apply it to the soles of your feet, a little bit in your arms, a little bit in your ears, and a little bit in the crown of your head. You'll just sleep better if you just do that. So that's the second set of stuff, positive things that you can do to sleep better. And the third is what I would say are supplements, health supplements or herbal supplements as they are called, or Ayurvedic medicines, whichever way you want to look at it. And Ashwagandha, for example, is now trending around the world as a famous...
It's popular in US as well.
I was actually saying that at least in 1 year, I was Googling and looking at Google Trends. And I think a couple of years ago is when I saw that the search for Ashwagandha in the US exceeded that in India. That's when you know it's arrived as a global herb. In fact, it's funny, I actually do a lot of wildlife tourism, and there's a part of Madhya Pradesh which is the worldwide center of Ashwagandha trade. It's called Nimach. It's in Madhya Pradesh.
Oh yeah, Nimach, Yes. Quite popular place actually. Exactly. Yeah.
It's the place where Ashwagandha trade is the so-called epicenter of Ashwagandha trade. But Ashwagandha is a great nootropic, which means it will actually calm you down and give you great quality of sleep. But you cannot have Ashwagandha in any form, and you cannot just think, oh, it's like a little pill that if I have more of it, I will, But Ashwagandha is an amazing thing, because in the night, if you have it, it will help you sleep better. But it will also give you energy during the day. So it's actually, in some senses, also an energy giver. It's an aphrodisiac. It's a whole, it's a magical product. It gives you sleep. It helps you sleep better, and also.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Vivek, we will come back to Ayurveda because, and Kerala Ayurveda specifically, we are at this beautiful facility. But before that, I think we should dial the clock back a few years, back to your IIM Calcutta days. We grudgingly have to admit, we are from IIM Bangalore, that Calcutta, the stories that we would hear about how much fun the students would have on campus were quite legendary. I don't think A and B can match Calcutta in that sense. Maybe reminisce about those days, but more specifically, there is the debate that has been raging on more recently about whether doing an MBA is good, or there's a point of view that some of those folks have, which is it's a waste of time, waste of money. Where do you stand on that camp? Or is that even a legitimate question?
When we graduated back in 98, 273 of us graduated, okay? And we end up meeting every now and then, in small reunions, big reunions, and so on and so forth. That camaraderie, that knowledge that is sitting outside of the outside me, in those remaining 272 people is just incredible. So the network that it provides, not just network to be able to get business done, but network to be able to learn. is just incredible. Every time I meet somebody and we have a longest chat, just their life journeys, where they've taken them, and the fact that the IIM has opened up so many doors for us, just I end up learning a lot. So I end up going to batch reunions a lot more than I otherwise would, simply because I'm like, kuch seekhne ko milega, it will be interesting things to learn. One of my batchmates was just given the famous alumni award so he's, I think, the second person in our batch to be given the illustrious alumni award, and it's so cool to basically see what he has done. I mean, all of us knew he had done a lot of cool stuff.
So who is the first one? Is it you?
No,
Very soon.
far away. There are more people in that group. But if you take small meetings, small big meetings, etc., if you ignore the banter that's always happening in the WhatsApp groups, the physical meetings where we have deeper conversations on topics is just incredible. I've learned, I would say, every year something kick-ass from somebody who's in my batch, who's done something and learned something, and or achieved something, or has learned something from their failures. And I do think that that's one thing which is very, very cool.
So it's not only the 2 years at the campus is what you're saying, but years beyond that as well, because you have this network where you can interact, where you can be more open, you can be more vulnerable with these people as well, and you learn from each other, which is
But
what
even on
is
campus, since you guys
valuable.
did
I mean, and was there some hubs in the campus as well? Because Amcal is very famous for certain hubs.
And I'm guessing you're not applying that on the shoulder.
IIMCal was great for many reasons, but there were 3 reasons which I think were famous. One is we had no attendance at all. There was no mandatory attendance. So there were some classes, I'm not kidding, large lecture theatre can seat 120 people, and there are 3 people attending a class. And the professor is very dedicatedly saying, these 3 have interest in the subject, and that's why they're here. Let me teach them amazingly. And what is sad is that actually what he was teaching was pretty cool. I mean, I wish I'd, known that back then when I was bunking. But I remember passing by that class. I was supposed to be inside that class. I looked inside and there were 3 people attending a class. And the teacher is still...
I'm sure you would have made mental note of who those 3 people are.
100%. I was in charge of placements. So I knew exactly what those 3 were, who those 3 were. But I think that was one reason why, in some senses, this whole forced attendance thing, I think it's adult education after all. It's postgraduate education. So I think you got to, in some sense, treat them like adults. So I think we were treated like adults from day one. There were at least 2 or 3 professors that I know of personally who you could have spirited debates with. And if the debate didn't end when the class ended, they would continue the conversation. They will call you to their home, which was almost always on campus, right? And they would continue the conversation over some amber liquid.
Also, they will not adhere to work-life balance.
No. What work-life balance? You're sitting in the professor's home, over a single malt and discussing the same topic with the professor, right? In some senses, it was mirroring work life much quicker, right? So that I think was the second reason, which is that it had a lot of, it was very laissez-faire, and in some senses that made it very, very, we were sort of forced to be on our own in some senses. The other one was the kind of alums that we've had. It is the oldest IIM, right? Yeah. So obviously we have the luxury of having the oldest and largest alum group. I think you guys started in the 70s.
73.
And we were in the 60s. So obviously there's a whole decade of the kind of seniors we got to meet was just incredible. I mean, I still remember there was this particular class which happened where some doyen of leaders came in and basically talked about their life experiences. And we would just meet these guys with stars in their eyes. And then we would actually find them to be completely like, very approachable when you're on campus, because you just suddenly see a very different side of them. But importantly, we would learn about their life stories and how much they looked at their first 10 years. And I remember this quote like it was yesterday. And many of us were obviously back in the days in awe of how much money they have, right? Yes. We would look at the fact that, arey, watch dekho, right? Gaadi dekho, right? And then you realize that, okay, for all the money that they have, what they would say is, in the first 10 years, they obsessed about learning. And that meant that they could not have to worry about the earning. And they mentioned this all the time. They said, join a place which gives you fantastic, whether you join a place that gives you fantastic learning or not, focus on learning. Your learning doesn't end with IIM. And after that, you will find the earning is very easy.
This is a good point, because it's something that young people hear all the time. We also used to hear from more experienced folks that you should focus on learning, not on earning. That'll happen. But when you're at that age, when you're 20 something, it's very hard to internalize this. How should they, are there any ways in which they can, apart from people telling them this, successful people saying this, some of them might say that you're saying this because you have the money. So is there a way for them to really build a deeper understanding of why they should focus on learning and the money will follow?
First of all, the younger generation is always, got my admiration because they know so much more than when we were their age. I mean, it blows me away about how much in the internet helps, but just the fact that they are
more aware
so
of
much
everything
is just amazing. I think they can leverage the superpower that they have of their own awareness as to say, let me analyze, because I have access to information and because I'm also much more curious and so on and so forth, let me leverage this to find out what really is making people successful. And honestly, if you think about it, whether it's in the area of sport or movies or anything, like the games are always won by people who are masters of inch wide, mile deep. And sometimes multiple inches, multiple things, but they've gone
Going deep.
a mile deep on that one. And that, I think, is the game changer, because the power law, or the so-called hyper-exponentiation law, is there. The person who makes the best reels is going to have 100 times, 1,000 times more followers than the average person. The curve drops very steeply off, and you will see this power law exhibiting itself everywhere. And therefore, I think it's important that they understand that whatever their passion is, whatever they think they can be good at, just make them obsess about it, right? Wake up and keep obsessing about it. We keep hearing stories about how Sachin used to obsess about stuff and Virat used to obsess about stuff and stuff like that. The reality is, these are not superstars because, God gifted them with more, better, faster reflexes. Yeah, sure, there were some gifts that they had. But I just think they worked harder. Somebody said it very famously, if you knew how hard I worked, you will not call me lucky.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Oftentimes people envy your success, but they don't envy what you have had to go through to get to that point. But also to figure out what is it that I am passionate about. Perhaps the way is to increase the surface area of the number of things that you try, or the number of dishes you eat before you.
In today's world, they have access to so many things. They can try so many things. And I think they can leverage that fact that they can have access to and try so many things to say, what do I like, right? What dish do I like? What kind of job do I like? And so on and so forth. While you can do that, remember that, the kind of stuff that you like at the age of 25 may not be the same as what you like at the age of 45. So do it with a view that says, okay, if I like this dish today, I may not like it as much 20 years from now. But I think that in some senses, there's also the point around saying, that being said, if you end up joining a startup, starting a startup, or joining a large company, you will basically be in a state where you say, okay, for the foreseeable future, I have a certain job to be done. This is what my job, this is what the company is, this is what my role is, and so on and so forth. Try to get to really fall in love with whatever is your job description. I genuinely believe that there is no job that you cannot fall in love with. I mean, many of us would have seen the Jiro Dreams of Sushi movie, right? I mean, how boring can it be to just keep rolling sushi every day for like 70 years or whatever, how many years you did it for. But he truly was in love with it, right? I mean, there was no...
And they become the master of
the
craft.
There is a reason why that movie, despite being in Japanese, very badly dubbed in the early days, etc., still is an icon. It's an iconic movie because it shows that even if something as boring as rolling sushi, you can become really, if you're passionate about, you can be really, really good at it. So I would say, whatever little bit of work you're doing, try to do the best you can, and then you will find that not only do you get joy, other people start noticing and saying, wow, there's something special about you. And then the flywheel turns very quickly after that.
But also on that point, I think, Vivek, like we were talking about it, sometimes you make a choice, sometimes certain choices are thrust upon you. But once you are in a particular situation or you are doing particular things, you should try and go deep. You should put in your full effort. And that is where then you would realize, whether you can actually be good at it or not, rather than being at a surface level. Because life, people say is unfair. But I see it the other way. Life is actually fair. It's giving you all these opportunities to figure out what you are good at. So don't give up just easily and soon enough.
Absolutely right. The reality is that how much ever you can't, somebody won the ovarian lottery to be born in a rich family, somebody was not born in a rich family. It really didn't make a difference. Look at I was looking at the last match where Jaiswal, really wanted to to preserve his space in the team. But, in this case, of course, he's trying to make sure he's in the team because there's so much talent around him. But look at his story. Look at where he's come from. Amazing look at what he's done. There are so many other people who are also born in such an unfortunate, low resource neighborhood. But he's just made the maximum out of it. So I think we can get inspiration from sport. We can get inspiration from many other places. But it's this point around whatever life throws at you, just, as somebody said, if life throws lemons at you, learn how to make lemonade.
Yeah. So IMCAL is generally known for finance, isn't it? So,
Yes, correct.
And we have seen a lot of finance professional, heads of banks and all coming out from IMCAL.
Yeah.
But you kind of moved to start your first job with P&G in marketing, sales.
Even during our business school years, we would see there was a certain small archetype. Even now, when we went to campus, the career development cell at IIM Bangalore was saying that they're the usual suspects who want a Unilever or P&G. What is that? You clearly were that archetype. What is that archetype?
So I didn't come from a market. My father is a doctor. My mother is a teacher of economics and maths. So, and I don't have anybody in my direct line who's in business per se. I have a couple of CA uncles, but that's it. So I didn't have any MBA even close to when I was growing up. And my father was in the army, so no chance of any MBA inside it. So, but I think when I was in engineering, one of the things we were exposed to was the power of marketing, right? We were also I was in Delhi University, so there was a lot of advertisements and sponsorships that used to happen during the festivals and stuff like that. And you would see what these marketing companies would do and how we would, arbitrarily be choosing one brown liquid over another one, and the differentiation was not definitely taste, or what we believed was taste, but basically perception. And this is the time when Pepsi was doing all its cool stuff back then. I remember this. We had won the contest, and on that basis, the canteen itself had turned more Pepsi than
Coke
or whatever it was, Thumbs Up back then. And I remember this, thinking to myself that, look, something about this, while I'm an engineer and I think that everything should be logical and programmable and all of that, there is something about this marketing that is quite intriguing because it can drive people to do things that otherwise logic can't explain.
Yes.
And so I said, let's explore more. So anyway, ended up, long story short, wrote the CAT, got through and went to IMCAL. And I'm very happy I went to a finance-heavy campus because the obvious pull was, okay, you're an engineer, 90% of the batch is engineers, why don't you just go to more of these hard courses, number crunching, etc. And I did take some good fin courses, especially the courses that were very popular. And I remember thinking to myself that, okay, this will be pretty cool too. Now, if you were a 90s school student, your Bible of marketing was Philip Kotler.
Yes.
And Philip Kotler had cases full of P&G, right? Literally P&G cases, right? So when P&G was coming on campus, naturally applied to Unilever and P&G. And it's a funny quirk because I actually was in both Unilever and P&G shortlists. But P&G didn't have GDs and Unilever had GDs back in my year at least. And therefore, they could just run through 5 interviews.
GDs are group discussions.
And group discussions are obviously logistically difficult to manage because you've got all these kids.
Yeah, you have to bring all the people on the same time.
So as a result, the Unilever process was running much later than the P&G process. P&G was just efficiently doing 5 interviews. Before I knew it, I'd finished my 5th interview, I had a job offer. And so I, obviously was like, okay, I've got the job offer. And P&G at that time really appealed to me because it was a very small company in India. It was the underdog.
It was also doing the anti-sales.
So the pre-placement talk happened. A whole galaxy of leaders came and did the pre-placement talk. And then they said that some of you will apply to marketing, some of you will apply to sales, some of you will apply to finance, some of you will apply blah, blah, blah. We're going to split into these different rooms. If your interest is in applying to these functions. And I remember the head of sales then doing this thing that says, okay, you've heard all the good reasons in that room of why you should join P&G. Let me tell you 10 reasons why you should not join P&G. And I want you to hear this from me as the head of sales so that you can't then later on told me, I wish I knew. And then he described the most dire ways why life would be messed up. He says, you come out of, top-notch business schools in the country. You'll have your friends wearing suits, traveling business class very quickly. Okay, earning a fair bit of money. You will be essentially sitting at the back of a truck delivering soap in the rural hinterlands. Okay, and at some days, and you will be looking up. You have no phone, no computer, nothing. And some days you will look at the sky. Yes, the sky will be much brighter and better than in the cities. But you will look at the sky and wonder, is this what I did an MBA for? Yes. Okay, if that 2 years is painful and the prospect of doing that for the next 1 to 2 years is not good, don't join us. And then he gave a few more sort of reasons why I should not join. And I remember telling myself, this is before we have even applied to the company. This could easily lead 20%, 30% of the population from not applying. Yeah. But this is a company that is so confident in what it's trying to look for that it actually wants to select only those people who have the desire to go through the hardship because they think something good is going to come out of it at the end of the day. They've done all the storytelling and the starry-eyed shows. But they're still telling me about the negative parts of joining, that I think it's an interesting place.
But coming back to this anti-sales, this is a very, very powerful tool that if it's applied in the right manner. So at Evam Labs also, in fact, the team here would vouch for it. Oftentimes in our interview process, the last few rounds with Sreejan and I speak to all the candidates. We speak to everyone that we hire eventually, or even the ones that we don't hire. Yeah. We always try to dissuade them by doing exactly this, that this is not for the faint-hearted. There are more setbacks than successes. It requires a lot of resilience. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you use that as a tool to appeal to a certain kind of human behavioral instinct, because some of them will hear this and say, okay, no, doesn't sound good. I don't want to do this. But then it will also very sharply attract a certain kind of persona that takes it up as a challenge. And that's the kind of people that you want on that.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a point where I agree with you and a point where I'm actually in a little bit of a dilemma myself. So I'm not sure I have a strong point of view against it. But naturally I agree with what you're saying, which is that of course you want people who have no expectation reality mismatch. The day they join, they don't kind of see what the hell they said this on the front page, but page 2 is very different. Was
bait and switch.
Exactly, bait and switch wala problem. But I think in my personal view, and this is a view I don't have as strongly as the first view, is I actually think that even a person who is, like, I don't believe that a good person that has passed through the interviews early stages and has come to you is actually going to be unambitious and not wanting to do well. I mean, you're not going to bring them in to talk to you if they are not otherwise given you signals that they want to do well. I think this kind of brutal honesty, what I call radical candor, is actually what the younger generation seeks even more. I think their bullshit filters for corporate speak is even stronger than ours. Yes. So if you basically give them corporate bullshit about why this is the coolest startup in the world and how life will be a bed of roses and everything else, they'll see through that bullshit, right? So the fact that you're truly trying to speak your mind may actually appeal to everybody, not just those who are going to self-select and say, let me join, but even the other one who maybe have not thought about it would go back and say, boss, I've attended 20 interviews in my life. This is the first place where they actually said that here are the negatives. And, they're clearly brutally authentic. They're clearly comfortable in their own skin to talk about the negatives, knowing well that it may mean some people don't want to join. And I do think in some senses it will appeal even to a person who you may not end up hiring for a whole bunch of other reasons, but I think it is universally attractive as a proposition, which is why there's this famous concept called radical candor, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Kim Scott popularized it. I strongly believe that people, the younger generation, can see through the bullshit a lot better, therefore better to be authentic.
I mean, one point which I wanted to pick upon, and something which we mentioned previously as well, was around money making. And what we find when we speak to the younger generations, they're also confused in terms of various career paths, which one is leading to more money. Sometimes this question comes, and especially you are coming from a background where you're a bit more middle class and all, this is on top of your mind. But what you also mentioned at the beginning, that there could be hard yards in the early years and you may not be making money. For example, in finance, probably you'll start to make more money on day one. But over a long period of time, which is 10, 15, 20 years, I think money eventually comes in any kind of job you want to pursue, and you are at it for the long period of time.
Yeah, totally agree. In fact, not that we ever do it. We just had, a couple of years ago, we had our 25th reunion. You guys will have that. That's the one which is held on campus at least, right? And it's funny because it pretty much happens in December in the same period, and you'll see the ABC people posting that we had our 25th reunion, and so we had ours a couple of years ago. And not that we ever did this. Actually, the thought didn't even cross our minds. But it's an interesting trend that somebody made, which is to say, look at the people today that are here. Everybody seems happy and sort of, in some senses, has achieved so much. This batch that we are talking about 25 years later. But the people, if you correlate the people that are the so-called richest and what job they got straight out of campus, it's a scatter plot.
Yes.
In some cases, the people who got the best jobs also happen to be at the top of today's richness. Yeah. And in many cases, the people who got entry-level jobs that were lowest paying, day 4 jobs, etc., are sitting right at the top of the pile. Yeah. Now, you could attribute that day 4 job to just the matka of the placement process, that they were actually good people, they got it on day 4. But you could also, but factually true that some people I know of, I was in charge of placements, I know that certain people were obsessing about certain companies, even though they were day 2, day 3 companies, and had put them as a dream because they said these are amazing places to learn from, right? I remember clearly, Asian Paints was not the best paymaster, but people had basically put it very high in the list because they said, "Bahut seekhne ko milta hai," right? I remember ICICI Security was not very high on the list when it was not day 0, day 1, but people had put, the hard finance guys had put it on the list saying, "Bahut kuch seekhne ko milega." Now, the point I'm making is those people today are sitting at the top because they basically obsessed about it and they were maybe wiser than some of us were. But therefore, it's a bit of a scatter plot, which means what? At the end of the day, if you are obsessed and do well at whatever you like doing and what fate throws at you, placement process is a fate process. It's not it's a complete fate process, as you can imagine. There's a lot of matka in the thing, but you get what you get. Then what you make out of it is more important than what you get on campus.
So the starting job, the starting designation, the starting salary, which we used to obsess over at the time, under those circumstances, the benefit of hindsight, it actually doesn't matter as much as what you make out of it.
Totally doesn't matter. I actually think that it is natural at that point of time, given what you know, to obsess about it. But I think it's important to kind of say, okay, I'm going to do my best because it is a process. But if I don't get it, life is not over yet. Life has just begun. Yeah. And I think as long as you meet people, that's why I'm saying that given that the younger generation has had so much access, to see how people's lives have gone and so on and so forth. Look around you, see the pattern, and you will yourself understand, you don't need to believe me, that life is essentially about what you do with the circumstances that you get.
Yeah. But sometimes do you think for Gen Z, because they are aware of so many things and there is so much of abundance of everything, be it knowledge, social media, things, materialistic stuff, do you think that confuses them?
Look, I think forget Gen Z, and forget something as complicated as career and life. There is enough research on the problem of plenty anyway. Yeah. If I gave you 22 varieties of strawberry jam, you will buy less than if I gave you 4 varieties of strawberry jam, right? Yeah. And this is empirical evidence. This has been proven multiple times in multiple research studies saying there is what is called cognitive overload that happens when you're given too many choices. Yeah. So this is true in retail. This is true even when you're ordering stuff and so on and so forth. So part of the challenge is, yes, it's true that in their case, the abundance is jobs and opportunities. But I'm saying if it is true for types of cheese and types of strawberry jam, it's definitely going to be true for far more complex choices like jobs. So
as a marketer, you've talked about behavioral economics. So you have to almost understand the human psychology and how we can be rational and irrational in the same breath. And so how do you get in that consumer's mind? And maybe you've told us stories about Ariel and how you're marketing Ariel and the size, the discount that you offered, or even with Swiggy, how you got consumed. Maybe you can talk about when in your roles both at P&G and then subsequently at Swiggy as well, which by the way were very different, I'm sure. What didn't change was that you needed to get it under the psyche of how we as humans and as consumers behave.
Yeah. So one of the things which I listen to religiously almost every week is I listen to behavioral science lectures and have read lots of books. In fact, reread the books that I didn't read when I was in college. In fact, asked my mother to send me those books saying I didn't read it when I was in college.
So you kept those books, yeah?
Well, she had those books.
So your mom kept those books or you wanted to keep those books?
I think she kept it. But I did ask her to send it to me much later. But it is also very sad that behavioral science had an acronym called BS.
Yes.
That makes it even worse.
Yes.
Right? When it is actually one of the coolest subjects. Yeah. So I remember this. I'll give you a couple of instances. I do listen to this guy. Rory Sutherland is a genius. He's the head of Ogilvy's behavioral science unit. He set it up, I think. He's written a lot of books. One of his books, which is I think easy for everybody to read, is called Alchemy. It's a must-read book if you haven't read it. Of course, books like Nudge and is also good for behavioral economics. But Alchemy is just an amazing book to read, as is Nudge. But coming back to behavioral science, my trigger for behavioral science came about as a result of what is called the engineering left brain hubris that I had in the early days when I was in the field. And there was an aerial promotion that had been given. And this is a pretty straightforward promotion. We had you have a 500 gram pack, you have a 1 kg pack. Usually there is a small discount on the 1 kg pack. That is obvious. But there was this particular promotion that was done where there was a deep discounted promotion on the 500 gram pack. And I remember telling my boss that, 500 ग्राम पे डिस्काउंट डाला है तो 1 kg तो कोई खरीदेगा ही नहीं, क्योंकि 2 500 ग्राम के पैक इज नाउ चीपर देन वन सिंगल 1 kg, तो कोई खरीदेगा नहीं. तो आई रिमेंबर हिम सेइंग टू मी, बी स्कूल से निकल के आए हो लगता है अभी. लुक एट व्हाट हैपेंस, 1 महीने में बात करते हैं. एंड टू माय एब्सोल्यूट सरप्राइज, actually, obviously the 1 kg pack did sell lesser than last month, but it still delivered 70% of its original numbers. So why did these 70, like every single one of these people who had bought a 1 kg pack during that month had bought a worse deal than buying 2 half kg packs.
Yes.
So I was thinking to myself that, okay, maybe there is something to this.
Rationally, it didn't make sense.
Didn't make any sense at all. So I essentially he then ended up talking about behavioral economics and psychology and behavioral psychology and consumer psychology, which was a very commonly used term back in those days.
Yeah.
And I remember then reading the book, and this is before internet was so easily available, but I remember therefore reading the books. But then after that, I ended up doing a lot of courses in it and so on and so forth. So I've done a lot of courses in behavioral economics, and much later, after 10-15 years of practicing it, very happy that I actually end up teaching it along with my very close buddy who's an absolute master at behavioral science, Professor Ranjan Banerjee, who happens to be a senior of ours from IIM Cal, but then he did his PhD, then became a professor.
Where do you teach this course?
He and I used to teach this together in SP Jain, where he was the dean. Okay. And then he went to BIT School of Management, and there again we used to teach it. And now he started he's the vice chancellor of a new university called Nayanta, and I'm sure we are going to teach it together there as well.
Okay. Great.
So anyway, so where did it come to play in multiple ways? Let me give you another example in the Swiggy world, right?
Yes.
In Swiggy, there used to be almost a thumb rule that says, if you give people friction, especially at the bottom of the funnel, there will be funnel drop-offs. Okay. A typical friction would be if you are adding a lot of fees, like delivery fees. If you add 5 rupees of delivery fee, there's a certain drop-off. If you add 10 rupees of delivery fee, certain drop-off. 20 rupees, then it seems excessive, and then there's a drop-off. Because maybe there are other alternatives, or people say, 20 rupees, I'm not going to, 100 rupees ke order pe 20 rupees delivery fee kaun dega, right? Yeah. Whatever, it seems logical, etc. And I remember by then I'd obviously done a lot of behavioral economics and studied it and all of that. I said the issue, if you actually understand the consumer psychology, is their belief was that even though you're calling it delivery fee, because of what people believe, they didn't believe that fee is going to the delivery boy. We were actually giving that fee and more to the delivery boy, but they didn't believe that. Yeah. So we actually flipped it and said, rather than charging it as delivery fee, because we are clearly giving it to the delivery boy, that plus more, but they don't believe it. So why don't we flip it and call it a delivery fee tip?
Okay.
And then ensure that the systems are there so that the moment you click the delivery fee tip, the delivery boy gets a notification that this tip is going to go to him, so that if they were to check with him, he will also confirm and say, हाँ मुझे मिला ये. So that's the tweak we did. Now, if you think about it, at the heart of it, there is nothing changed in terms of what the consumer is being asked for.
Yeah,
the consumer is being asked for 20 rupees, the consumer is being asked for 20 rupees. It is for delivery. So what is so complicated? Yeah. However, this one change meant that there was a dramatic change in the intent to pay, and therefore the funnel's drop-offs were far lower with this than with actually just bumping up delivery fee. Yeah. Now, this again tells you whether it is a 20 rupee note is a 20 rupee note. It's got the same Mahatma Gandhi on it.
Yeah.
Okay. How is what you call it got anything to change in terms of consumers' willingness to pay? I think the willingness to pay is a function of what the price is, but also what the value is that you perceive for that price, but equally importantly, how you understand that value and therefore how it is explained. This is the big.
You have done a lot on this behavioral science and consumer behavior, and you talked about how consumers behave rationally and irrationally both at the same time. Maybe what are the two key learnings coming out of it, which has been with you for ever since you studied?
And also, given we are still sort of on PNG, we should also maybe talk about how you guys ended up over a course of time growing the overall diaper market in India.
One is how it has changed me and so on and so forth. It is just literally said to me, it doesn't matter which company you're in, what you're trying to sell or what you're trying to market, you have to be in touch with the consumer. So consumer work is something that I do every single week. There is not a single week that goes by in any job in the last 26 years that I have done where I'm not been connecting with the consumer. Directly, indirectly, doesn't really matter. If it means I'm reading through what they have typed out on our website, that's still understanding what's going on in the minds of the consumer. If it is speaking to 10 consumers who are at my physical venue, that's still talking to the consumer. If it is in a social gathering, trying to understand insights on what drives them to choose or not choose a certain category or a certain brand, that's still consumer behavior. But often enough, I would do, back in the days, when we would physically go to grocery stores, I would go to the grocery store and spend 10-15 minutes in picking up the grocery, putting it in my cart, and 20 minutes in just observing how other people are interacting with the aisle, what they're picking up, what they're not picking up, sometimes even speak to them about their choice of diaper or shampoo or something. And so, which means every single week when I was doing my own ghar ka grocery shopping, I was also understanding their interactions with FMCG and why they're buying what they're buying or why they're not buying what they're buying. And it would be fascinating. Now, truth be told, I had to be taught how to speak to the consumer, because consumers are not going to tell you straight up front why they make the choices they do. But after being equipped with that skill, when you then unleash the fact that every week you're doing, imagine I'm doing 52 consumer interactions a year, and over 20 years, that's like literally thousands of consumers being interactions. So even in Ayurveda, I will speak to people about Ayurveda. We have a family gathering and somebody has a problem that, let's say, they are suffering from, and I suggest to them that they should try out Ayurveda. Not just their reactions, but also the reactions of their friends and family members is illustrative in terms of what their reactions are. Because in some cases, there will be people going at me and almost suggesting that I've suggested something that is just, fake science. And some other cases, they would be very interested. So what drives people of similar educational backgrounds to be so polarized is a fascinating subject for me in today's world when I'm in Kerala Ayurveda. But I do think that habit of understanding the consumer as to why they do what they do is mission critical. And now let's segue to the example on Pampers, which is that for the longest period, India was not really a diapering country. And there were multiple reasons for that. You could say price was one of them. It was expensive after all to do diapering, but there were a host of other reasons. And all those stated reasons were actually written down, and people had done enough research to understand that. Price was a barrier, yes. Fear of rashes or nappy rash, diaper rash was a barrier, it was written. A whole bunch of things were written down as to why I should not be using diapers. But I think the genius of the team that actually solved this problem, who I was quite closely observing them when they did it, was that they actually said the reason why India is not really a diaper using country is because there is a perception that the diaper using mum is not a good mum. And that perception is not driven by her per se, but is driven by the one woman who is the strongest influence on her motherhood, which is her mother-in-law. Not her mother. She's not outside of the first 4-5 months after motherhood. She's going to go back and be either directly or indirectly under the gaze of her mother-in-law. And the mother-in-law clearly didn't use diapers. Yeah. And the mother-in-law clearly thinks that a woman who's putting diapers so that the woman or the mother can sleep in the night better, as perceived by her, is actually a bad mother. रात को मतलब बच्चे के लिए रात को उठोगे नहीं तो तुम मेहनत नहीं कर रहे, right?
In fact, I've heard stories when people used to put diapers on their babies during daytime, but in the night time they'll remove the diapers because of this
problem, right? So if that was the perception, then you kind of sat there and you say, okay, it's expensive stuff. So obviously the woman who's mostly not economically sort of earning herself, etc. Most of the country was not that way. The woman was a homemaker, is not going to have the money to go and splurge on diapers, and therefore she needs the approval of the husband / mother-in-law to be able to do it. There is no way. The husband is basically mute in this process, and the mother-in-law is clearly saying this is not a good way to bring up children, and so on and so forth. So no chance. So you can keep attacking and showing ads to the mother or the father, and you will not move the needle. So the genius was, I think, the first time ever in any diapering history where there was an ad that was put out.
Yeah.
Usually Pampers ads or even Huggies ads or diapers ads will have what? Happy baby running around, happy mother running around, happy father running around, very happy that the child is using diapers. But imagine, we are talking, in about 20 years ago, series of ads which actually shows no baby, no mother, no father. What is a diaper ad without baby, no mother, no father, no? It actually showed the two silver-haired ladies talking to each other, and essentially, starting off by saying "Badai ho, dadi ban gayi ho," which means clearly saying it's a mother-in-law hai, right? Dadi versus nani, which the foreigners, I kept trying to explain to them. No, this is clearly mother-in-law. And they're like, how? I'm like, we have two different names for father's mother, paternal and maternal, and all of that. So anyway, we showed all of that, and then in that conversation, the two are talking, and the grandmother is endorsing the use of diapers as a mechanism to deliver mental development for the child, because the night sleep is a critical moment where both for children as well as for adults, mental development can happen. So if it is interrupted because of need for milk and all of that, that's okay. Yeah. But if it's interrupted because of wetness and your sleep is being disrupted, then mental development is disrupted. Therefore, mastisk ki vriddhi.
Yeah.
It's like, who would have thought in the entire global list, they would have never thought of connecting diapers and mental development. But it was done, and therefore this became a case where this grandmother is telling her friend that, nahi, bahut acha decision liya. Doctor ne bhi bola bahut acha decision hai, kyunki raat ko bachcha soega, to acha develop hoga. Yeah. And many reasons, of course, distribution also had to be built and everything else also had to be done. But the diaper category today is more than 20 times bigger than when this ad was done. It was what we call the category unlock. There are things which unlock the category, right? And this is a category unlock.
Is there a mental model, Vivek, for identity? Because I'm sure if you analyze and put your marketing hat, there are a lot of industries where there are certain things that require that unlock. Yes. Is there a way to identify that? And I'm sure Swiggy as well, you guys would have seen some of this yourself.
So I think the answer is yes. Unfortunately, it's not a button press, because in most cases, consumers won't tell you that the key to my heart or the key to my brain is this.
I mean, most of the cases, consumers are also not aware. I mean, they can't articulate these issues as well.
Yeah, they won't, and they'll justify and they'll post-rationalize and rationalize their behavior and all of that. So I think, I genuinely believe, I had the luxury of, there was a department inside the company that was called MRD, or Market Research Department, or which later on became Consumer and Market Knowledge. And this had some serious full stack PhDs inside it. These are behavioral scientists. These were consumer psychologists. These are PhDs. Imagine they're doing the PhD and where are they working? A soap selling company. But these were geniuses that I got to talk to. Even my colleague in the UK, I remember, was a PhD. I remember speaking to her, every time was like going to a lab and basically listening to some scientist. And she used to just sit some 5 desks away from me. Yeah. Right? She would sit me down and explain the reason why humans behave the way they do. And I would look at her and say, lady, how did you understand this? She said, she was Italian, so she used to gesticulate and she would say, I did a PhD, so can you give me some respect, that kind of stuff. So I remember this and I thought to myself, okay, which means this is a solvable problem. Even if you can't become a PhD, let's see what their methods are. And of course, you formally learned how to get meaning out of what consumers are saying and equally what consumers are not saying, but also to observe. And I think this is one of the things which is crazy. Many people will tell me about my photography. There's some really nice bird photographs that I've got in flight. Now, the equipment is important. You need to have a good lens, you need to have a fast camera and all of that. I mean, but more than that, you need to actually understand bird behavior. Yeah. If you know what's going to trigger the bird to fly, only then can you prepare to basically be able to shoot the bird while in flight. So same way, learning to observe consumer behavior and take meaning out of it is then it becomes muscle memory. Right? You're literally looking at a human being and just gathering signals like crazy. Like you're just saying, okay, I'm just gathering signals. You remember the first time I met Sreejan, I was like, okay, Sreejan, odd name, can't know where he's from, Chaudhary, how's he spell it? Let's see his accent. Let's see what he looks like.
I was super impressed.
Right. And I was like, why am I doing this? Am I intending to sell anything to him? No. The answer is no. But I'm like, isn't it fascinating to be able to see, if you're familiar with that there was this movie that was an icon where it was called My Fair Lady, where the linguistics professor could listen to a person and detect which part of London they are from or which part of England they are from, right? It's a fascinating thing because he is just observing and doing pattern recognition. And I think humans give more signals than we choose to look at. So it's all about learning how to do that. Am I a PhD at it? Of course not. But am I a daily student of this topic? The answer is yes.
And it seems like this is a trait which somehow you have inculcated in yourself. And I would be very honest, I don't think it's a very common trait. Even for me, not that I'm a very learned person, it's difficult to learn from each and every experience and from each and every human being. You know, how do you do that? And how should we think about doing it? And how should the younger population think about doing this?
See, the reality is that these are things which if you make it muscle memory, then it's not painful anymore. Driving, when the day you first sat in the car, everything was painful. Today you can drive and do lots of things along with it, right? As long as they're legal, right? But you can definitely listen to music and all the legal things you can do. But back then, even the radio you had to turn off when you first entered. So I think if you make observations and chronicling the observations and writing down what you learned today as a habit, in the beginning it's painful. I think it's painful only for the first couple of months. And then for life, it's not painful for the rest of your life.
So on that, since you mentioned writing, PNG has, you spent 2 decades, a very successful stint. It has taught you a lot of things. I think one of the things that you mentioned is the art of writing. And writing is not just physical writing, it's also making mental notes as you go through experiences. And the role that has played in where you are and how you learn and how you prepare your day. Today morning you were reciting how you were spent just a few minutes, it doesn't take much time. But also for people that go through a lot of stress or anxiety, and I strongly believe that a lot of the stress and anxiety exists in vagueness, not in specifics. The more specific you are, as you write it down, it becomes, you tend to become less anxious. Certainly it works for me. Maybe you can talk also a little bit about that skill that you developed and how you utilize it and how the young people should learn from that as well.
So in PNG, the business writing is not, it's an art and a science. A bit like the famous Amazon 6-page memo, which is legend. PNG had a 1-page memo, which was legend. And if you didn't know how to write, you would not progress in the company. So forget all the good reasons why you should learn. It was like a career blocker if you didn't learn how to write back in the days. But I remember the story from, this is a story which I'll again get into, but I remember being sent for this training. It was one of those list of trainings that you would go through. It was called memo writing in those days. And it was like a 1-day training. Somebody really senior who knew how to write well would train you on the principles of it. Templates were given. You had some practice. But come on, if you're teaching 20 kids how to write, those who think they know English, you're kind of paying half attention to it. And you're like, "Theek hai, template hai, bhar dunga main," right? And so we attended it and we came back. And it was a good training, but that was it. And I remember this because 2-3 months, maybe a month after that training, my boss visited me and out of the blue, he said to me, "I would like to review your business. So why don't you print out your last 3 monthly business letters." We used to write a monthly business letter every month and we just use that to go through the trends on the business and all of that. So I had basically memorized every number that was on it, what was Ariel growing at, what was Vicks growing at. I had it in my head the night before the boss arrived. And I thought, because that's where the conversation is going to be, saying, why is Vicks not growing as fast, and so on and so forth. And as it so turned out, he told me, I had those 3 printouts. So it was lying in front of him. So he looked at me and said, "This is October letter, this is the November letter, this is the December letter. We sent you for this training in November or whenever it was. And can you tell me how these November and December letters, or maybe the December letter, how is it better as a result of you attending the training?" Now, this is an out of syllabus question. I had the business of Ariel in my head. I had business of Ariel last year in my head. I had all sorts of things in my head, but not this. So I kind of looked and I struggled to point out 2 or 3 places where it had improved. And then he turned it back and he basically said to me that, "Look, if this is what you're going to do, we spent a flight ticket to fly you to Bombay. We've spent money on you, flight, hotel, etc. And this is what you've done out of it. Until you learn how to apply what we teach you and become better at it, I'm not sending you for any training." I remember thinking my career is just ground to a halt after glorious 5 months in the company. And but then he said to me, "But I think you can improve, so fix it." Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember telling myself, I will never be caught out on this topic again. And he did tell me, therefore, if you don't understand why you're being sent for a training, ask me that question. कि इसका मेरे काम से क्या connection है, इससे मेरे को क्या फायदा मिलेगा, कंपनी में क्या फायदा होगा, मेरे धंधे पे क्या फायदा होगा. You have right to ask. But it's my job to explain. But once you go through the training, you got to get better. The only way you're going to get better on anything like writing skills is to be able to write. So basically, I flipped after that to starting to write every day, because you cannot get better at something if you don't do it every day, and then writing a slightly longer letter every week. So every day I would write a small diary chronicle. It was a simple reflection on the day that says, what did I do well during the day? What did I do not so well during the day? What are the key next steps from the day, from all the meetings and market work and everything else I've done? And I used to do this, and then in the week I would basically summarize the week in terms of what we achieved in the week, what we didn't achieve in the week, and so on and so forth. And then of course, when I started writing the monthly letter after that, imagine I'd been, at least 20 practices have happened before that. So obviously over 3-4 months after that, the writing quality dramatically improved. But I remember I still, till today, I mean, obviously I use more modern techniques of using voice notes and stuff like that. But I think the power of writing and inscribing something is still way better. I find, and there's some new research on this one, that you tend to remember 2 or 3 times better what you have written than what you have heard. And this is why it's important to still type/write. I mean, writing is even better. It actually is better than typing. But as much as possible, write. If not, at least type. You know, voice notes and other things are not as, or listening is definitely not as.
So writing on iPad qualifies or doesn't qualify?
I don't know the research, but I think there's something about that tactile feedback. I think if iPad is giving you as much tactile feedback and it's giving you as much friction as writing on the paper, I think it'll do the same job.
And so, as you rightly said, writing declutter your minds as well. But this is, you know, the examples which you gave were more on about your professional life, but on the personal life as well.
Yeah. So, for example, I remember writing to myself on a couple of things. One, even a decision that I had to make on when I was going to leave or not leave the company. I remember writing to myself saying, what is my criteria for when I'm choosing to leave, right? When I was on the cusp of choosing. And I, by the way, wrote this letter to myself 4 times before in over a 10-year horizon. The 4th time I finally left, but the letter to myself saying I have a cusp in the road, whether to leave or not to leave because I have an offer out there that is really kick-ass, happened 4 times before I finally left over a decade. Right? Most people think I stayed 20 years in the company. Well, I actually didn't stay 20 years in the company. I actually stayed 5 times. 5 times I chose to rejoin the company effectively. And so I remember writing to myself because the dilemmas that were there, were just too many, right? You know, too many pros and cons, multivariate decisions. So I remember writing a note to myself saying, if this decision is a great decision to stay, why will it be so? So I wrote that document. And then if this decision to leave in hindsight is a great decision, why would it be a great decision? And I wrote that. And the way to write that is to fast forward a year from now, 2 years from now, and write down what would be true. So almost like a time machine. And then then you write down what is actually true. Imagine if somebody is writing a life story of me to say, he left the company and then this happened and then this happened and then this happened, and that was written down. And you did the same thing for the opposite. Forcing yourself to write both sides of the thing just clears your mind like anything
So do you
else.
get your kids to write as well?
They do actually have a better writing habit than many of their generation. I think it's good that their school also doesn't force devices, in fact prevents a lot of devices. It forces them to write. Even today their exams are written, which is good. So they do write.
We are at this this beautiful Ayurveda gram. We are in the middle of the day, the sun is out, this is amazing breeze, and I think if you have ailments or if you're feeling stressed, you can just start to feel better just by being here. And there's a story behind it. So maybe we start with your father, who himself did not 1 but 2 revamps, or reinvented himself twice. And that in a way was really the origin story of how you got introduced to Ayurveda, and then life has come full circle back to Kerala Ayurveda.
Yeah, so yes, it is. My father's, in some senses, is a very unconventional army doctor for 2 reasons. One, he was one of the first few doctors who actually trained to jump and become what is now called a Paracommando or special forces, etc. Back in the early 70s, he was actually a doctor with the Paracommando unit, which meant that you learned how to fight and you learned how to jump, and most doctors don't learn how to jump.
So did he go to any of the active zones as well?
Yeah. Except he won't tell me. But
wow.
because when I asked him, I said, "How many people have you killed?" I don't think he's. I don't think he has, because doctors were bound by the Geneva Convention,
Yes.
so you would not do that. But coming back, I think the trigger for what caused it was actually somebody just challenging him. I think he was telling me this story about back in the days. He was playing tennis, and I think there were 2 lady doctors and a Paracommando and him, and they were playing. I think they were playing mixed doubles, and this Paracommando, I think, twisted his ankle. So obviously there are 3 doctors there. So obviously they ended up going and tending to him. And while they were tending to him, obviously he had a painful. I may miss some parts of the story. This is well before I was born, but the story goes that to keep his mind off the pain, my father was asking him questions about what he does, right? And so how many meters, how many seconds after you jump do you open the ripcord, and all of those things, because back in those days there was no Google. So you have to ask human beings and so on and so forth. So he was asking all of that, and this guy is obviously in pain. So I think he said something to the effect of "Chodo doc, tumko ye sab samajh mein nahi aayega." All right, and that must have obviously gone deep. And saying, okay, ऐसे कैसे बोल सकते हो कि मुझे समझ में नहीं
Took it
आएगा?
as a challenge.
So took it as a challenge, and he joined. I mean, at least that's one part of the story. And so he became a Paracommando. So I think, and that made a difference, because he really had a much better understanding as a doctor in the armed forces, understanding what the challenges are with injuries. And I think many years later, that also triggered him to go and do what was extraordinarily unconventional in those days. In the 80s, he went and on his own money, accord, leave, etc. The government didn't really help him at that point of time. Went and learnt Ayurveda from one of the amazing schools of Ayurveda in Jamnagar.
Wow.
And this was leave without pay. In those days, we were on middle class, income. When your primary wage earner goes without pay, it is a stress on the family.
Yes.
I remember him going off to do that. And he came back transformed, because he had actually learned to be a much better doctor. And I remember him actually, treating me in some senses twice over. So I had, I think, I fell down badly, and I basically broke my left bone here near the elbow, and they put a plaster, and I think the plaster hadn't healed properly, or the bone hadn't healed properly. So there was a bit of a what we call bad joint that had happened, as a result of which I could not have full movement. So there was like a few degrees here and a few degrees here. They were restricted. Now this is not my power hand, so it didn't really make a difference. You went on life. You could write, you could play, you could bowl, you could do everything with your right hand. But this was a problem, and I didn't have as much strength in this arm as I did in this arm.
This was after the treatment already.
This is when I had gone and gotten my hand broken, then conventional plaster of Paris, etc. was put, and this was a bit messed up.
Allopathy, yeah.
But it was mildly messed up, so it didn't really matter. It just went on with life.
Yeah.
And I remember after he learned all of that, I remember him taking me to a Vaidya in Jodhpur. And this is this weird scenario where I've gone. Before this, when I used to go to hospitals, his own office, etc., there was like a typical what you can expect from a hospital. And I go to this Vaidya, and the Vaidya basically says, हाँ, गलत जुड़ गया है, ठीक कर सकते हैं. So then he spoke to me and said, मैं आपको एक लेप दे देता हूँ, 3 दिन तक आप लेप लगा के रखिए, और उसके बाद बात करते हैं. I was like thinking, अरे वाह, 3 दिन लेप लगा के अगर मेरा जोड़ ठीक हो जाएगा तो life is very cool. I still remember I was still not a teenager then. And so 3 days of lep later, I went back, and then 3 or 7 days of lep, I forget now. And then he was kept talking to me, अच्छा बेटा क्या करते हो, स्कूल में खेलते हो क्या, हाँ क्रिकेट खेलते हो, कहाँ किस पोजीशन पे खेलते हो, अच्छा कीपिंग करते हो, बैटिंग किस पोजीशन पे करते हो. He is talking to me. And I'm thinking, okay, this is just banter which people do. And while he was talking to me, he gave a hard thwack and he broke my arm.
Oh my God.
Obviously, if he had told me he's going to break my arm, I wouldn't have allowed him.
Yeah.
Right? I would have said, nahi. So he broke my arm. And I think that lep was to soften and make it easy to break and all that. And then he did a little movement and he said, ab sahi baitha hai.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And then after that, he gave me wooden splints for a few weeks. Not plaster of Paris, because he needed the skin to breathe and all that. And then after that, he gave me some yoga medicines, yogic sort of exercises to be done to strengthen the muscles, because they're obviously atrophied.
Which is now called physio.
Yeah, now called physio. And then he said to me, 6 महीने में मिलते हैं. आप पूरा जो मैं बोलता हूँ करेंगे, अब 6 महीने में मिलते हैं. And 6 महीने बाद, when he actually called me, he said, अब मेरा हाथ दबाओ. And then with my left hand and with my right hand, he said, दोनों बराबर strength के, अच्छे strength के हैं. And then he says, चलो अच्छा हो गया. So, भगवान के दया से सब साफ हो गया. And I was thinking to myself, this guy has done something to improve my arm.
Yes.
And then after the entire process, he is basically saying, भगवान के दया से हो गया. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. But my dad, I remember clearly, not just that, but he used to treat a lot of other his patients, especially those who had chronic conditions.
To the young people, if you had to explain the concept of Ayurveda not as a belief system, and it's not, but more as a science or in a language that they would understand, in a simple way of, this is one of the oldest, if not the oldest healing systems in the world. How would you explain it to them?
So I think the way I would explain it to them is the same way I have learnt it myself. I continue to say, while we have some amazing doctors who've spent 5.5 years of getting a degree and then 20 years of practice, I will never be 1% of them, because they are professionals. But every time I learn, so I've learned from them and also learned from modern scientists who are trying to reprove and reprove Ayurveda. And the way I would look at it is in two parts. Every time we go for a run and it's hot, if we have fresh lemon juice, we all know it works. I don't think we need to read a scientific journal to know why it works or how much it works and how much percentage electrolyte loss we have had and so on and so forth. Yeah, obviously you need to know all of that too if you're a professional doing research on this topic. But to know whether it works or not, you don't need to be a scientist, you just need to be objective. So I think there is two parts of Ayurveda. Do we know that it works? I think there's enough and more knowledge on the fact that it works. And now obviously modern scientists are trying to bring what is called the objectivity of measurement systems to say, does it work or does it not work? The second part of it is, why does it work? What is the mechanism of action? What we call the MOA, mechanism of action. And that is essentially the second phase of research that Ayurveda is going through. Just last night, for example, this facility, one of the most relaxing therapies you can ever have that can actually seriously make a dent to your stress levels and your sleep levels and your headache and all of that is something called Shirodhara. You'll see that often in the ads, Ayurvedic ads, where there's a stream of liquid fall, in this case oil flowing on your head. So Shirodhara, there is 4 papers that I have in front of me that I was reading last night.
Yes.
Which is an appraisal of the mechanism of action of Shirodhara. That's literally as it says.
Yeah.
And this is essentially explaining it at a physics level, saying, by the way, the manual of Shirodhara that we have, and this is drawn from the texts in English, runs into 50 pages.
I have also done this, but after speaking to you, I realized that was not the real Shirodhara.
The real Shirodhara, the manual, the SOP, the standard operating procedure that we have, that if you go to that therapy center behind you, there will be Shirodhara being performed today, I'm sure, right?
So it's not like what people peddle on social media all, with all these different kind of...
Okay, so let me tell you the level at which it is precise.
Yes.
First of all, the weights and measures in Ayurveda are so precise that as a science geek, that is just amazing to me, that the weights and measures are so precise. The smallest weight measure is less than a milligram. Oh. There is a specific term that is used, I forget the term, but that's less than a milligram.
Yeah.
Right? And from there it goes all the way to, obviously quintals and stuff like that, but everything between. And so a system of measure for weight, for liquid measure, for time, for temperature was very, 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 very well defined. And as a result of which, the way in which you're supposed to do a certain thing or to manufacture a certain thing is also precisely measured.
And this has been defined from...
This has been defined all the way from some books which are 300 years old. There are certain books which are, I think, 300 years old, and there are certain books which are 800 years old. The one which Kerala uses is an 800-year-old book. It's called Ashtanga Hridayam, written by this sage called Vagbhata. Right, who's actually a Sindhi, but the dude went all over the country and found that in Kerala is where he's found greatest amount of peace, because there's nobody disturbing him.
Yeah.
Everywhere else there was a lot of invasions. 800 years ago the country was So the SOP for Shirodhara describes what should be the viscosity of oil, what should be the temperature of oil, how many centimeters should the oil fall on your head to, how much should be the frequency and amplitude of oscillation. It's not supposed to only fall in a certain part, it should be oscillating, and a whole bunch of things about different types of oils for different types of ailments and so on and so forth. Did you know that in Ayurveda, if you have a headache, it's not just a headache. There are, I think, there are 19 types of fever. I think there are some 20 types of headaches.
Which is what is now being discovered by modern science as well, isn't it?
So depending on the type of fever, That's why in the Ayurveda you keep hearing the word it depends, and most people think it depends means the guy doesn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? If you went in and said I have a fever, mujhe fever ka medicine chahiye, they won't give you just one medicine. They'll say it depends on the type of fever you have and what the weather is, and on that basis they'll give you a different medicine.
So this notion of hyper-personalization, which we all thought came post the internet era and the digital era, actually in medicine and healthcare has been around from the beginning in Ayurveda.
So let me give you an example. I got cold, a little bit of a cold in the monsoon summer.
Yeah.
The medicine I was given by the same doctor to the same me was different from the medicine that I was given last week when I picked up, and the kids brought some virus back from the school, and so I got some ailment. That medicine was different from the medicine I was given there, because what has changed is maybe a little bit of me. I haven't really fundamentally changed in those 6 months, but the weather out is different, and therefore what I need to be given, the entire protocol changed. Now that is how hyper-personalized it is. Not just that, Shobhit will be given a different medicine from Sreejan, but that Shobhit will be given a different medicine if you're in the winter, hard winter, will be given a different medicine from.
Or if you're not in Bangalore versus you're in Mumbai or Delhi, then it'll
Absolutely.
be
Different time of the year.
Different time of the year. So Desha Kala are both factors, right? Prakriti, Desha, Kala are all factors that are considered. So in some sense it is hyper-personalized. It's no different from saying if Sreejan is ordering for khichdi in the winters in North India, the kind of khichdi's he'll be recommended will be very different from his ordering for khichdi in summer in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
You'll be given a lightish pongal by Swiggy. Now, what is Swiggy doing? Swiggy is recognizing the factors. Where are you ordering from? What desh I am in? What is typically a person ordering from? What is Sreejan's order history? What is Sreejan's prakriti? What does he tend to like?
So, Vivek, you mentioned about the cold that you had, and then how what you were given, the medicine you were given was different depending on the time of the year. A lot of young people, for whatever reason, it seems like they fall sick a lot.
Yeah.
What should they do, and what are some of the learnings that you can share from them, practical learnings from what you've learned in Ayurveda?
Yeah, so there is a saying in both Siddha medicine in Tamil as well as in Sanskrit, which essentially says medicines are food and food is medicine. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's literally what it says, right? Which means the first thing we would actually tell them to do is stop following these fads as if it is basically fit for everybody. Not everybody's body is the same. We all know that. Friends who may eat golgappa or a kachori or something like that, and you may have acid reflux as a result, and you may be totally chilled out.
Yeah, I mean, different food impacts people.
Yeah, so if the same food has caused you to have an acid reflux and you to be chilled out, clearly it means the difference is not the food that you had, but how your body treats it. Now, if that is true for having a samosa kachori, then definitely it's going to be true even for foods that can cause you cold. So the first step always is to basically have what is called an understanding of your own constitution.
Yeah.
In Sanskrit, it's called Prakriti.
Yes.
And Prakriti analysis is very, very common. It's the first step before you are treated. You are never given any treatments before your Prakriti is analyzed. And that is the first step. Now, if you are of, let's say, the Kapha Prakriti, which means you tend to essentially have a lot of, your water is at a high level, essentially. That means you're likely to catch some of these ailments at a different rate than, let's say, if you're a Pitta Prakriti, which is more fire-based, etc. So understanding that, it will tell you what kind of foods to eat or not to eat. By the way, as a side tip, it's never amazing for you because fruit and yogurt mixed together is not recommended.
Oh, it isn't?
No.
Well, I think all of us are eating fruit and yogurt.
I'm sure you are. Right? But it's not generally recommended.
One of the questions I think a lot of people have is there is a lot of information on Ayurveda.
Yes. A lot of it fake too.
A lot of it is fake too. So you give a framework of whether it's appropriate, whether it's the right thing, and when.
Yeah.
How should people think about finding out the answers to these for themselves?
So maybe an added question is, I mean, because we keep talking about healing and, comparing it with other forms of healthcare and medicine and so on and so forth. But is Ayurveda more of a lifestyle or is it more of a, healing method?
No, so it's everything. It's a science of life.
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing to note is that it's a science of health and not a science of sickness.
Okay.
Now imagine if you were to go into a hospital, walk into an amazing hospital, and then say, "I'm here," and what is the first thing they ask you?
What is the disease?
That means you're sick.
That means you're sick.
Yeah.
Now, and then of course, then if you have an eye issue, then you're sent to the ophthalmologist and so on and so forth, right? Heart issue, you're sent to the cardiologist and all of that. But the assumption that you're going to walk into a hospital is that something is wrong with you.
Yes.
Which means you're sick.
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine if you walked into a hospital and say, no, nothing is wrong with me. Like literally try this tomorrow, go to a kick-ass hospital, go to the reception and say,
yeah.
And then if they say, well, how can I help you? And then you say, I want to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Just see the reaction. You will have one reaction, which is a weird reaction, right? Or if they said, no, we understand, but what's wrong with you? And you say, nothing is wrong with me. I feel perfectly healthy.
Yes.
They're really going to send you to the mental health section of that hospital, right?
True.
Because it's not built for that way. Nothing wrong with those people. They're obviously men of science. I'm not dissing down what is truly astounding science. Okay, so they have amazing science. They are truly remarkable in what they do. I'm a big fan of a lot of what the amazing hospitals and the science does, but it is definitely not built in a deep, strong way to help you to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. And whereas an Ayurvedic doctor is spending a lot of time on that topic in the 5.5 years that he or she is doing his Ayurveda. But coming back to the point, staying healthy is about diet, it's about lifestyle, and there's something called Dinacharya, of which Ratracharya is one part. So Ritucharya is defined. Very precisely, Ritucharya is defined. 6 seasons have been defined for the Indian subcontinent. Okay, Shada Ritu, and therefore 6 different types of. And by the way, during the Ritu Sandhi, which is when one is changing over to the other, is when you tend to fall sick. If you think about it, that's a change of season ailments that you suffer from.
When you were growing up, parents will say, because of change of season, he's getting sick as well.
Right?
Yeah.
So that Ritu Sandhi definition of what therefore you need to do to prevent yourself from falling sick, both diet as well as perhaps certain medicines or certain herbs that you need to take, as well as certain habits that you need to do, would actually keep you healthy. And I think that's the first step. Every human being should basically learn how to stay healthy, because you take the power back into your own hands to say, I know what it takes, just like you think it's okay. The other cool thing about what your body tells you is that sometimes what you like is actually, if you're actually paying attention, what you like may actually be good for you in many cases.
Coming back to your story, Vivek, and now having spent a number of hours over the past few days with you, what we are starting to also realize, and it's quite remarkable, is that this is really a culmination of a few things that have happened in your life over the years. You've done marketing, you've been a storyteller at P&G for a couple of decades. Given your father's choices and experiences, you had an early tryst with Ayurveda, and here you are at Kerala Ayurveda. And it seems that now you're again tackling what you've described as a marketing problem. It's actually telling a story that people can understand. A lot of the answers are already there. It's more about communication. So how are you thinking about building Kerala Ayurveda as you look over? And you said that this is not a T20. This is more of a long innings.
This is a
test
match. Right? I mean, we've seen some amazing test matches.
Yes.
And why is it important as well, Vivek? Because, generally when people think about Ayurveda and marketing and, it's not always correlated.
So I think it's a good idea that has not been explained to the modern generation. And I think obviously many people well before me are trying to take the story and explain it in their own way. And a lot of great examples exist of how people have taken new age Ayurveda companies that have tried to explain the problem. The trouble is they're all explaining little bits and pieces of it, which are helpful, but they don't solve the problem. So if you're familiar with the famous 5 blind men and an elephant story, Ayurveda is so big and so vast that it is not possible to explain it in some short way. So I think on the science of it, I make sure that our company is doing all the stuff that we need to do on science. We have these CMEs, we have a lot of research happening, we do a lot of our own research on products, on services. We make sure we are reading any claim that we make in marketing is backed by science. The protocols are deep. Imagine for Shirodhara, which is happening, there are thousands of places that offer Shirodhara, but very few that I think do it the authentic way, where every little bit is taken care of.
So maybe Vivek, you should take a moment to also explain. One is, the first time I heard about Kerala Ayurveda from you, I was amazed at the legacy that the company has, the history. And then secondly, also the fact that it's full stack, which is also very, very unique.
So Ayurveda consists of teaching you how to stay healthy.
Yes.
Step 1. And then if bad luck happens that, there's a viral load or some change of weather or some mishap that you suffered, etc., that you do fall sick, then basically treating it and curing it to some extent with medicines, what they call Ayurvedic medicines. And then the last stage is when things are too serious, then let's say your toxins are deep in the system, then to do an elimination process, which could be done surgically through surgery, Ayurvedic surgery, or non-surgically through Panchakarma, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a very deep cleansing procedure. So given that it is all these three, we are one of the few, if not the only company that does all of it and does it globally. Ayurveda's first part, which is training. Of how to stay healthy. The second stack is, as I said, we have products that we sell over 300 products made in this factory. And the other thing which is very important to note is our products are cleared for sale in the most stringent heavy metal and chemical contamination standards that exist anywhere in the world. So there are two types of toxins that good processes eliminate. I think it's important to know that. One is if the soil is messed up, then through the soil it will leach and come into the roots and the herbs and into the other parts of the plant. And of course then you're going to have it that is no different from you eating chemically contaminated food, right?
Yes.
If you go to the mandi and buy stuff, you have to be careful. And that's what caused the organics movement to grow. The second type of contamination is products or agricultural products themselves have toxins.
Yes.
So the process of manufacturing has to be detox those. So let me give you an example. There's a fantastic product that I think you should definitely use, since you mentioned something about your knee, which is actually made over 40 days. And the process is made over 40 days by washing that, it's sesame seed based product. And sesame seed, the husk of it contains a toxin. It's not a toxin that's going to kill you, but it is a toxin. And that process has to basically the toxin has to be eliminated. So the process of eliminating the toxin that's on the husk of the seed is over 7 washes. And there are different liquids that are used to wash the sesame seed and then to dry it in the sun so that the toxins are removed. Now that's not any chemical toxin that's come through that's what is called naturally the plant, even a healthy plant would have it.
Yeah.
So that elimination process takes 40 days. So we make it over 40 days. I know some people take shortcuts and make it in 10 days. You're not going to know the difference because it's not going to look and feel any different. The third stack is services, right? Which is clinics and therapy centers like this.
Okay. So across these 3 stacks, where do you think there are opportunities for younger people to start something?
You mean as an entrepreneur?
Yes.
I'm very inspired by a lot of young people who have started. So, companies like Kapiva, who I greatly admire what they've done, have actually gone into a specific area, and within that they're tackling a certain area. They're only a product company, and they're not as wide a product company as we are. They sell only a certain set of products, and they've done well there. So I think you can either choose a problem area and say, I'm going to obsess about that problem area. There's, I think, Auric, another company started by a good friend of mine, who's essentially gone after only, liver detoxes, right? And imagine a single line called liver detox, he's gone after that and gone hard at it using a set of Ayurvedic products. So you can either go deep into one problem area. Somebody can go deep into orthopedic pain and say, I'm going to just solve for that, right? So because so many conditions exist, just like in modern science, somebody has created only an OB-GYN.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity to actually make a big pharma company like exists in today's world out of just Ayurvedic processes and the 3 stacks which you mentioned.
Think about like Dr. Ortho, right? It is a single product solving a single problem statement called knee and joint pain, right? And just on that, it's built a multi-100 crore brand. So I think the possibilities are truly mind-blowing. But I think the challenge is threefold. We've got to make sure that we eliminate poor standards of manufacturing, poor standards of service. The reality is that the good, the bad, the ugly all exist within the industry.
Yes.
The second one is to communicate. You have to communicate to the modern audience in a language they understand. And I don't mean the difference between Sanskrit and English, but even within English, you've got to communicate it in a way where they will understand it. And the third one is we've got to continue and resume the process of scientific discovery.
So on that note, we have to talk about the first time when I understood this concept that you explained to me, that the recommendations of Ayurveda would really differ not just amongst us, but also the Desh and Kal. So it's personalized. And my mind immediately went back to the fact that obviously a big technology shift that we are seeing is with AI. And with this, we talked about unlock earlier. How do can we think of this as a major unlock when it comes to distributing 100%. Ayurveda using AI? And explaining.
So remember I said we have to use the modern technology. That's not just true for a new microscope, cool microscope that's been discovered, or a new cool spectrograph instrument that's been discovered. Sure, it's true for those kind of technologies. But AI is the biggest elephant in the room, amazing technology that's out there. So if Ayurveda were to basically leapfrog, in some senses, it's a bit like, just like India skipped the pager generation and went straight to mobile.
Yeah.
I think if Ayurveda can basically say, let me adopt AI and adopt it in a massive way, it will actually have a bigger advantage than even conventional medicine, because it is inherently customized, right? And the reality is that if Sreejan were to open his phone and type and ask GPT a question, if it's used to you, and if your GPT is used to you, it's not going to give you the same answer.
Yes.
Right? And therefore, given that it is differentiating how it's answering you, then why? Because the engine has got what is called basic, it's not AGI, but at least basic intelligence is there. Then I think Ayurveda is going to be like that. Because if you take all the wisdom of the doctors, there is a certain, what is called method to the madness. You can actually reverse engineer. By the way, this is an experiment I've done multiple times. I'm not a doctor, but if I hear a doctor giving me a final solution, he's saying, "Aap ye le lo, aap ye kar do," I will always say, "Can you talk me through the flowchart in your mind that you used to eliminate and select and deselect stuff, as a result of which you finally came to suggest this to me?"
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Talk me through as much as the selection process, talk me through the rejection process.
Yes.
Ki aapne ye sab kyun reject kiya?
Yeah.
Right? And when you do that, you create a multi, like a tree, a flow chart.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at it and say, hang on, if he's doing this flow chart every time he's recommending to me, and that same flow chart he's using to recommend something different to Sreejan, then surely it's magic for any computer scientist today.
Yes.
And it's definitely magic for any AI researcher today to say, okay, this is just a node. There's a bunch of nodes and it's just flowing through a bunch of nodes.
Yeah.
And we can definitely AI it.
Have you tried with allopathic doctors also the same thing?
I have. But I think what happens is that in their case, they are obviously very scientific community. There's no question.
I mean, there's a flow chart for them.
There is a flow chart for them
they think about it, but it's very standardized.
It is a flow chart, but it has less variables to who you are.
Yeah.
Right. It is about it is what is called, what are the symptoms that you see, as a result of which conditions can I select, which conditions can I reject. Let me give you an example. Right. This is a practical and real example. Let's say that. You look fit, but I'm still going to ascribe this to you. Let's say you suffer from acid reflux. Ki matlab kachori khaya aur seedha khatte dakar, as they say, right? Acid reflux. Now, if you went to a doctor, they would look at it and say, and basically, let's say it does feel like you're having a problem in the heart, they will eliminate very quickly whether it's a heart problem or acid reflux problem. And if they've zoned it down to acid reflux, whether it is you asking this question or me asking this question, they will give the same medicine. Kya denge? Antacid denge. Effectively, they'll give you an antacid. Yeah. Now, what does an antacid do? By definition, it's an anti-acid, which means it's a base, which means it's going to be an alkali with a base leading to salt and water, if you remember. Yes. Right? So that's what they're doing. So whereas in Ayurveda, you will basically understand why is this person having acid in the part of the esophagus he shouldn't. Yeah. And they will basically eliminate the creation of excessive acid, as opposed to just topical relief. Ki sab acid jab hua hai, it is obviously burning your pipe. So in our product will basically help give topical relief, but it will also prevent the acid from being secreted excessively in the first place in the future.
Wide array of things that you've done and things that you've learned. First of all, how do you define success?
For young people who kind of, want to enjoy life and maybe they want to spend their money in devices or experiences, travel and all of that, I do think that there is a money aspect of success. It'll be foolish of us who are at a slightly different stage of life, having had the luxury to earn a bit of money, to kind of say to them money is not important. I think there's a certain money component to it. But I think that money component is a bit like, you have to have enough to be able to do things you enjoy. And anything more than that, sure, that's great. But there's a minimum threshold that is there below which life is painful. So if you get above that, then you're good, right? But after that, I would actually say success is when you're doing a piece of work that gives you joy every day. Like you don't have to, in some senses, you could actually say that, imagine if somebody loves to play cricket, right? And his work involves him going to the cricket pitch every day. Is he ever going to complain about, he's going to just say, dude, going to work is my joy. I wake up and say, wow, one more day of going to do what I enjoy to do. Yeah. So I think if you are successful, if you have found a place or you have learned to love a place where you actually love going to work.
How do I find my cricket? How do I find the thing that I would like to do or I would like to pursue?
So, I mean, to each their own, what their likes are up to them. I think that we are capable of being good at multiple things. Somebody was telling me that if Dhoni hadn't gone into, if he'd not been born in a cricketing country, he might have been very good at football. I mean, somebody says that.
Nadal is a very good footballer.
Nadal is a very
Jonty Rhodes used to be a very good hockey player, and then he became
right? So, if he was born in a non-hockey cricket playing country, where are the chances Jonathan Rhodes would have been anything but not been a cricketer, right? So, it's not like he was born for cricket, right?
Yeah.
There's no such thing like that. There is an element of, there are multiple things we can be really, really good at. Some of it is linked to environment, luck, where you were, what you ended up doing a lot of, and some, found a good mentee, mentor, etc. But I think the point is this: find a place where you're generally happy. You're not going to ever find the place where you're supremely happy.
Yeah.
And then obsess about being so good at it that gives you so much of joy. Because when you're super good at it, you just see people looking at you and saying, wow, that guy's a dude. He's like amazing, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the social media world, that'll mean you'll get more likes.
Yeah.
Right? In the social world, that means you'll have, more friends and more people wanting to, learn from you and sort of seek your attention and, be friends with you.
Instant gratification doesn't always happen.
Yes.
Right? So sometimes if you like it, then you have to find joy in just doing it and not worry about the likes not coming.
Yeah. You shouldn't start with the likes in mind, but there's no doubt that likes give dopamine hits, so, enjoy it. But I think if you basically say, I'm just going to obsessively be good at it, then obsessing to be good at it in whichever you generally like as a place would allow you to become really, really good at it. I mean, imagine, as it's funny, right? We talked about Jonty Rhodes. He made fielding sexy. Let's be honest, all of us hated to field.
Yeah.
Aapko ball tha, bat tha, we were happy. Fielding
No one would ever say, I'm a fielder.
I'm
say,
a fielder.
batting karte ho, bowling
Exactly.
karte ho.
Right? And so he made, because he really, really loved it. And even today, if you think about it, he's a fielding coach. You can see that he obsesses about fielding. If he can make fielding sexy,
Yes.
okay, you can make pretty much everything sexy.
Okay, let's do the rapid fire. You want to do as well?
So, quick one. Morning person or night owl?
Morning. I used to be night, but I learned Ayurveda.
You think morning is better?
Yeah.
Do you prefer Vivek as a mentee or Vivek as a mentor? What are you better at?
Now I guess mentor,
Yeah.
but I have had 4 amazing mentors, which means, and I was clearly one of their favorite mentees, which means I was a decent mentee as well. But those 4 people are amazing. I'm still in touch with them.
You're very humble. I think you are one of the best mentees I have ever met.
So, this is an important one. Chole bhature or bene dosa?
Both are unhealthy. But if you can give me ghee dosa more than benne dosa, I'm good.
Abhyanga or Shirodhara?
For me, Abhyanga, because I know my body type, and I would prefer Abhyanga.
Okay, this day there is this fad of Ozempic,
Yeah.
So for weight loss, Ozempic or Ayurveda?
200 times out of 200.
Ozempic.
Ozempic, you should Google what they're saying about Ozempic and its negative effects.
I know.
If there was a movie on your life, Vivek, who would play you?
Who would play me? Well, when I was young, or younger, there was somebody who actually said that in certain films, Shekhar Shuman looks like you.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about his acting skills. I'm just talking literally the looks, because you've got to look at who can play the character well and whose looks are there. So
I can now, in Utsav, if I imagine Utsav and Shekhar Shuman,
I mean, I'm not saying I'm a fan of his acting or anything of that sort.
I know you are very particular about all the oils, but let's say in the modern terms, if you have to choose between lavender or jasmine.
For my body type, jasmine. Okay. So again, if you see, even though these are herbs, I mean, jasmine is anyway native to India, and what it does in terms of its properties, I'm aware of. So I would definitely use jasmine.
Okay, maybe we should go through some of the Gen Z slangs and see if you. These are health edition Gen Z slangs. Okay. So just give one sentence if you understand this or not. Brain rot.
I'm going to be wrong in this one. But
please.
Brain rot is when essentially the brain is not brain fog, when your brain is sort of in the zone where it can't think, but brain rot is when you're doing some piece of work which is just rotting your brain.
Yes. Endless doom scrolling. Is one example. Biohacking.
I mean, biohacking is basically figuring out ways to hack your body and get yourself to do things that you couldn't do, like live longer and live, healthier and all of that.
So do you think what Brian Johnson is doing is biohacking?
In some senses, that's what he's trying to do. But there are some parts of what he's trying to do that are actually, funnily enough, Back to the Future, because he's actually using Ayurvedic principles.
Yeah, actually, some of the things which he talks about is what we talked about today as
Exactly.
well.
Yeah.
Grounding. I think this is very related to Ayurveda and what we talked about today. Grounding.
Grounding, I don't
Also
know.
called earthing.
Yeah, it must be just, stop,
Barefoot.
Walking
just
barefoot.
walking barefoot. Yeah. Touch Mother Earth.
Eco anxiety.
I guess it must be when you're worried about the actions that you're doing and what it's going to do to the planet.
Yes. Soft life.
So this I don't know. Tell me.
Soft life. I also don't know. I have to read. Choosing ease.
Choosing ease.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Less effort.
Yeah, okay.
Instant gratification. Don't put much effort, but get the rewards quickly.
I'll tell you one thing on soft life.
Yeah.
Most people think that to live an Ayurvedic life is to actually live a life of denial, right? Because you say, सात्विक खाना तो सिर्फ नवरात्रि के समय खा सकता हूँ, otherwise through the year कौन खाएगा?
Yeah.
Actually, this is a big myth. Ayurveda is a science of life. It's not a science of denying you the pleasures of life.
Yeah.
So it has principles on what you can do to enjoy. It does not prevent you from enjoying life in any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
And doesn't say ye mat khao, wo mat khao, etc. And that is why you would actually find, there was a big Onam Sadhya that happened here, and there was a whole bunch of things that came, and all the doctors are peacefully enjoying. And I just asked them, I said, how come you're enjoying all of this? They said, we know our bodies, we know what we can eat, and the fact is it's done once a year, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
In this case, the big sadhya is only done once a year. So I think it's, you're not going to be by having a soft life, which is the opposite of hard life. You don't need to have a hard life to have a healthy life. You can have a soft and hard life. Parts of it can be soft and hard to have a healthy life.